All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mentor Nation podcast. It's your host, John Abbas here, and I'm excited to be with you today. We have an incredible episode, and I cannot wait to bring on an absolute power couple to share their story with you. But first, though, if you're new to the podcast, I want to welcome you. Please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching, whether it's YouTube or Apple. That way that you're just notified every time I release a new episode, which is approximately every single week. And I have some great episodes coming up soon. If you have been here before, I want to welcome you back. And I want to thank you for listening to this show. It means a lot to me. And it's why I do what I do. So that brings me to today's episode. So we all know this, but ideas are a dime a dozen. They're about as cheap as they come. We all have them. Most of us, we'll get excited or we'll think of something and, we'll start telling other people about it. We'll share it with some friends. But, for most of us, that's where it ends. Taking an idea from that initial thought to building a successful product or company, it takes a lot of risk. It's hard. It takes guts, and it's just persistence, and not everybody is willing to make that journey. And that's really why I can't wait for you to hear today from Jessica and Phillip Miller. Jessica and Phillip are the founders of Colony Cocktails. And Colony Cocktails is a highly successful gluten-free line of wine-based cocktails that taste amazing. And I'm not just saying that. I ordered all of their flavors before I even had them on the show. And my wife especially is in love with them. They taste so good, and they sport a 10.5% alcohol content starting out, which if you drink, that's pretty high alcohol content. If you're trying to go out and have fun, this will help you get there pretty quickly. So Phillip was a bartender, and Jessica was just working in marketing. And together, I love this story, guys. Together, husband and wife, they're at home, they have the idea, and they're just testing out recipes until they invented something that they were proud of, some flavors that they were very proud of. And that's how they launched their company. And today, their beverages are sold nationwide online. They're sold in Whole Foods and many other stores around the country. And we just have a great interview today. They talk about their journey. They talk about the steps that they took. They talk about the mistakes that they made. But the most important thing we cover today is them sharing why it's so crucial when you have an idea that you take action before that idea goes to the graveyard, which is why they say that the graveyard is the wealthiest place in the world, because there are all of the ideas that were had that never became, the companies that were never started, and all of the great products that were never created. And so this is just a fantastic interview. So I hope you sit back, take some notes, enjoy, and get inspired. All right, guys, we're ready. Jessica, Phillip, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I have a lot of questions for you guys today, so I'm excited, and I hope you guys are ready.
We are.
We're
Thank
excited.
you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, okay, you guys have built a successful business in one of the hardest industries in the world, and I know this, with less than a 1% chance of success rate. You did it during the pandemic as a husband-wife team with a kid. If that's not a recipe for hard, I don't know what is. Were you just asking for a bruising when you started this?
Well, to be fair, the journey started in 2017. So, it was just like a slow burn and culminated to, hey, we're ready to go. We have our production date scheduled, and at the end of March originally last year. And then all of a sudden, so we have this pandemic thing that's upon us, and
nobody expects the global pandemic, right?
We go into complete lockdown, and we're trying to figure out how, with supply chain disruptions, ingredients that like may not make it there. We're overnighting things that should have just arrived with like at least a week in advance. I mean, it was a test of like, I think coming out of that, quite honestly, if we made it through that, we could make it through anything with the different kind of problem solving on the fly, like within 20 minutes.
I bet, it's crazy. Right before the pandemic, I interviewed this young guy. He's in his 20s. He owned an event planning business and was a multimillionaire in his mid 20s. And so we recorded the episode. I was going to publish it. We were about maybe 3 months out. And right before I was going to publish it, he messaged, he's like, don't publish that. Like, I don't want people thinking I'm a multimillionaire. I lost everything. I'm going bankrupt. And I've never published that episode. So, it's just crazy. And for those listening in, guys, for all of you in the audience, Jessica and Phillip Miller are the founders of Colony Cocktails. It is, and I'm just reading this, it's a gluten-free line of wine-based cocktails with a high alcohol content that you guys created from scratch that is now sold in many Whole Foods. It's sold nationwide. Just so you guys know, when I saw 10.5% alcohol, I ordered each flavor this morning before the interview.
I saw that.
That's all I needed to see. I was like, 10.5, done. Tired of these 5% beverages that you get so full and bloated before you feel anything. It's like, it's ridiculous. But I'm just really excited for you guys to share your journey, how you did, what you went through, the highs, the lows. But before we get started, I wanted to ask, can you guys just share a little bit about your backgrounds? What did you do before you started Colony, and where did the inspiration come from?
Yeah. Well, I've got over 20 years of experience in the automotive industry. So very much clearly tied to alcohol. No.
Maybe the cans.
And you have your experience.
So I bartended my way through college at Tulane, and that's where I learned how to craft beverages, and I kind of got the bug there. And so we're cocktail enthusiasts. We like to mix it up and make some complicated stuff here at the house and source out some really rare ingredients or difficult to track down ingredients and make our own simple syrups and stuff like that. So that was kind of the inspiration.
Oh,
wow. Wanting something like you said, we don't want a 5%, 12-ounce beverage that you're sipping. By the time you get halfway through it, it's already warm, and it's not unique, and it's not like sitting down and ordering off a specialty cocktail menu at your favorite bar or restaurant. We really wanted to deliver that experience in a portable, fun, enthusiastic sort of can that, has a more aspirational branding to it that we thought just wasn't in the marketplace yet.
Yeah.
And so once we had that idea, we knew we had to run with it.
Yeah. And the other piece I'd like to add too is that, as cocktail enthusiasts, we have like a massively stacked bar. And yet at the same time, there were cocktails we wouldn't make because it was just super inconvenient to open an entire bottle of champagne for 2 ounces. Right. And so we were coming up against
on a Tuesday night,
yeah.
after a rough day, trying to put the kid to bed,
So we actually created a solve for ourselves, which was like, how can we create a beverage that's far more, compatible with our lifestyles and far more convenient. And also, we would go to events and I'd be making like thermoses filled with like our original kind of cocktail ideas. And we're pouring, champagne or Prosecco. And it's just like, there's gotta be an easier way to this. And so that's really kind of where the nugget of the idea was and where we started.
And this is really before the RTD space blew up from canned cocktails to everything that's out there now. So we were kind of early on with the idea and knew that there was potential for it.
Awesome. So, and I have to ask because like, I think everyone in their life has an idea for an alcohol company at some point. Like even me and my wife, she wants like a vodka line with like the bottles shaped in like downtown Chicago or like different cities around the country, but so few people like really act on it. so like, what was it really inside of you guys that took it from just being this awesome idea, I want to solve my own problem, to actually going for it rather than just solving your own problem just for yourself and moving about your life? Like, what made you take the leap?
I think honestly, we've been talking about finding that idea and starting our own business well before that. I mean, for maybe, years before that, 7 years before that. And it was just trying to find that right idea that, blends your passion, right, with, again, solving a problem with, like, what is the market opportunity? Like, where are we in the world that, is this the right time and the right place? And I think that all kind of came together.
Gotcha.
The entrepreneurial spirit was definitely in both of us. And so we always had that as a dream. Once we finally found the right idea and put all of the metrics and research behind it, we knew that there was some potential there. So we really wanted to just put our foot on the gas.
That's awesome. You make a really good point just now that I want to reiterate for the audience, is that you've always had the entrepreneur spirit, but that doesn't mean you just jump into something. You took your time, and when the timing was right, when there was a cross between your passion, a need for the market, and something that you could actually do, like, and I've talked about that in some other podcasts before. It's just like, there needs to be that intersection. I just think that's awesome that you bided your time and you waited. And when the timing and the opportunity is right, you move forward. So I'm excited to figure out how you did what you did. So where do you even start? Do you just start mixing stuff at home until something tastes delicious and you're like,
well, that's part of it.
Yeah. Isn't that all the time? Really, we started with figuring out the alcohol laws. So those are super complicated across every state, some states even in different counties. And then you've got the federal level. So it's a 3-tiered system. It was obviously engineered to be overly complicated and tax you every step along the way because it came out of prohibition. And it hasn't been reformed since. It's due for reform, and it's due for a whole lot of change. But with those laws in place, we saw an opportunity to do what we wanted and use wine as our alcohol base, because that allowed us the greatest distribution model. So we could be in specialty stores, grocery stores, instead of just having to be like in Virginia, we're an alcohol control state. So our only option then would have been to, if we use distilled spirits, to go through the alcohol beverage system in Virginia, which is even another barrier to getting your stuff into the hands of consumers.
And then you're in a specialized store, which is really not driven by impulse purchases, and we're an impulse purchase, to be honest, like retail wise. So
you go into a liquor store, you're going for something specific.
A big old bottle of something brown, usually.
Yeah, exactly. Which is going to lead me in a little bit to something I want to talk about, which is just your packaging and branding, which you guys did a fantastic job with. So I didn't realize that. So the laws are like one of the most complicated things before you even start. So I didn't even add that in the beginning of the intro as one of the most difficult things, as if that wasn't enough. So it was difficult. So it just was a lot of studying, a lot of trying to figure out what you needed to do, how to do it. Was it expensive to like have to deal with that?
With the alcohol thing? No, actually.
It was time consuming.
Yeah.
And understanding it and the nuances of every different regulation federally and then state by state. And I mean, it gets down to what's your alcohol by volume and what size container are you using and how you're allowed to package them, what everything has to be said about them, what the label restrictions and laws were, and how to go through that process, not just nationally, but state by state. Everybody has a look at that. So you really have to have your plan lined up before you go to production.
Yeah. And if I was you guys, I would say the same thing, because I would want to deter all listeners from ever starting a competing beverage. No, I'm kidding. So, man, that's crazy. So this was 2017, the inception of the idea.
Yes, correct.
And then you started doing research. So what did you decide on? What was like a wine cocktail? Did you want to start with one flavor, 3, 5? Like, what was like the
We knew what our first one was going to be because it was like one of my favorite cocktails that I'd order only when I was out because it just wasn't convenient to make at home, which is the French 75. And that's our Biarritz, is based on that. But we definitely wanted to go into the marketplace with more than one flavor. Just because, that's not going to be the answer for everybody and you don't want people to get turned off. And so I know some businesses have launched in the alcohol space with one, but we saw an opportunity, like, let's do it, do it right. And so we specifically have 3 different cocktails that appeal to very specific tastes. One's much more fruit forward, our Tangier. One is for the person who likes like something a little bit with a little bit more bitterness, like a Negroni drinker is going to love our Charleston. So we wanted to at least kind of cover as many bases with as many different palettes that we could.
I love that. So did you start just like in your kitchen on your own bar, like putting things together? And then do you go to a flavor house? Like how does...
Yes and no. Yeah. I mean, we went to the flavor house first and understood the capabilities of what we could do. And we gave them our scope of what we wanted to accomplish. They came back to us and said, this is how this would work. This is the process. We started that process. And then, we went to the kitchen, right? We went to the bar, we went in the kitchen and we started mixing things up to try and decide what we wanted to hit those different flavor profiles for people. And so that we had something kind of for everybody when we started in the marketplace.
And we got really boozy with our friends and had some nights where we don't remember, but it's complicated Excel grids of like specific measurements of like, okay, this one is the best version of that recipe.
I'm serious. I love this. Like, cause people don't realize you go to a store and you buy like a protein bar and you don't just even think about how many thousands of variations they had to like bake in their kitchen and test on everybody before they get to something that you would just buy. It's so cool. So you get your flavors together because I can't wait to get into how you guys got into distribution, packaging. I mean, there's a lot there and I'm sure you guys made some crazy mistakes along the way. So take me a little through the process here. So you research laws, you start testing out flavors. This is the fun part. Like, oh, this is great. Yeah, this is going to be amazing. Everybody's going to love this. What's next? Like you place an order, like how does it work?
Find the wine that meets your needs. So you got to find the supplier. And then, your flavor house goes and does testing with that. And then we overnighted them our actual cocktails from home that were pre-mixed in some, and then had actual stuff that they needed to add to it so that it was fresh, had the exact, flavor profile and the effervescence of, if you added champagne or Prosecco to something, which we did. Then really they kind of come back to you with round after round after round of different things trying to hit that flavor that was the original recipe. And so that was
those were some interesting mornings because they tell you to do it in the morning and you can't brush your teeth, you can't have coffee, and because you have to have like a clear mouth.
Yeah.
And you're literally filling out, a spreadsheet that was like 11 by 17 of, acidity, bitterness, sweetness, color,
tongue feel,
like
aftertaste, everything you can.
And so we have our version of our cocktail and theirs with different variations. And we're literally just doing this. Yeah.
That's so funny. When COVID hit, I lost my sense of smell when I got COVID a year ago, and I still don't have it. Like I can smell a little bit, but anything fragrant, it makes everything smell like rusted metal. And so I could just imagine how difficult what you guys did would be for me right now if I was trying to start something. Yeah, it was ridiculous. So you're testing all of these flavors. No, at this point, are you thinking in terms like of distribution, like how many you're going to start with, like what channels you're going to use? Because I can imagine it's going to be kind of expensive to do this. So it's going to take me into my next question involving like self-funding or raising money. But like, what's take me through like kind of your thought process. Like how far ahead are you thinking at this point?
I mean, we we were basically trying to find a co-packer, manufacturer that would like who does craft beverages, because like we needed like the lowest minimums, to get started, because especially because we were going out with 3 different flavors.
Yeah.
We needed to make sure that we could cover all 3.
And they've got to be licensed for wine and have all of the appropriate bonds and everything else. So that was a process to find the right co-packer who we could work with in terms of minimum order quantities, but also quality control, location, everything. So that was definitely the next step after we decided on which formulas were going to be the ones we move forward with.
Yeah. And I mean, from a distribution standpoint, I mean, that's one of those things that until you have something in your hands, it's really hard to, I mean, it's still, a struggle. And I think established brands will tell you, because you have your big distributors and then you have your smaller, just getting people to pick up the phone, which is why I think direct to consumer is growing now that people have figured out how to work that angle. In the alcohol business, because it's such a, it's one of those things where you almost can't tackle it until you have your product in hand and then can ship it out too, like immediately. So as much as you want to plan, you can't really start those conversations until you're all the way through the process.
And by the time we had our pre-production samples, the marketplace was blowing up. And so just to get in front of those distributors, to send them samples, to get them to actually taste your product was just incredibly difficult. So what we decided to do is, being in Virginia, we had the opportunity to go ahead and get our own wholesale license so that we could self-distribute in the state. And we just said, you know what, we're going to bootstrap this. We're going to load up the car and we're going to go around and try to see what we can get sold, and just get some traction, get some momentum behind us and take it from there.
I love that. So did you guys end up raising money, or are you still bootstrapped, self-funded?
We're basically self-funded. The only money that we've ever had invested is from friends and as like personal loans, to be quite honest. Yeah. But it's just been more of a bootstrapping operation.
That's awesome. Shark Tank. You guys need to go on Shark Tank. So my wife's best friend, her cousin, was a bartender, and together with a few other bartenders, they invented Screwball, which is peanut butter whiskey. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's exploding throughout the country right now, but they did the same thing. They had to bootstrap for a while and it wasn't easy. And then something happened. I don't know. Somebody picked it up, either an influencer or somebody famous. And it was like wildfire after that. And so, hopefully a rapper one of these days is like, just got a colony cocktail, and then boom, you just see all these orders coming in. You're like, yes. That's awesome. So I want to get into a little bit about like the journey itself. What are some of the early mistakes that you made? Or were there any when you were getting started, or what was the biggest one?
It was a perfect process, clearly.
Super easy. Yeah.
Woke up and
I mean, it's been, I mean, everything is learning. And I think, which is good, because then you fall down, you skin your knees, but then, more moving forward. But I think because we're completely like new to this space, this industry, of course you're going to make mistake after mistake. And at one point, and I know everything was dictated by the pandemic when we went into production, but I just felt like everything was going wrong. And I was so embarrassed because I have a high standard for my own like performance. And
Yep.
I finally was on the call with our rep there who kind of manages all production. And he was like, Jessica, you don't understand. We run big brands through here, and they all have the same problems of like getting materials on time. And I was like, I felt so relieved that it was like, oh, it's not me. It's literally just the way things work. So that's like, buckle up, because it's going to be like this for every production run.
Wow.
I said to you the other day in the kitchen, I said, we had some minor little thing. And I said, you know what? I'm starting to realize that starting your own business is really just a series of fumbles, and you just absolutely refuse to give up. There are always going to be problems that come up, and you put your head down and you keep on moving.
Absolutely, man. I just want to add a point to that, because that's so powerful. And I think to your advantage, when I was interviewing Aaron Hine, who owns Life Aid, and he reminds me of you guys so much, because had he known what he was walking into, might have never done it. But because it was ignorance on fire, and instead of, intelligence on ice and overthinking everything, it made him believe, even though he made a lot of mistakes, and just like you guys made a lot of mistakes, but you didn't know you could fail because you just didn't know what you didn't know. And so because of that, you just kept going and you kept going. And he said that not knowing anything about the beverage industry was the reason he had success, because his story was really similar. He walked into a grocery store and couldn't find a healthy energy drink. And then he got with his buddy who's a personal trainer. They just made a list of all kinds of healthy stuff. And they're like, yeah, let's just put all this shit in there and we'll send it to a flavor house and let's see if they can make an energy drink. And that was it. And it's just like, this reminds me so much of it, even though you guys fumble a lot, that you guys are where you are now and you're growing, and it's just really awesome. So I want to talk about distribute. How'd you guys get into Whole Foods? Like, did you
Instagram?
No way. Are you serious?
I mean, it literally, Whole Foods was part of our original flavor brief into that. We wanted to make sure that we had the right ingredients, that we met all of their standards. So they've been on our radar from the very beginning. Right. And we went through the whole process, and we were on the sites, like the different kind of sites that they require you to be a part of for evaluation, but they have a very clear process, and they had already been through it for last year. And so we were just kind of like, this is just going to take time. And like, it was a Friday night in August, and we literally got an email on our just contact form on our website saying, hey, I saw you guys on social media. And I wasn't even really doing advertising. It was just, they found our Instagram page and said, I'm the regional buyer for Whole Foods, and we'd like to bring you on board. And I was literally like, are we being punked? Like, is this like one of our friends? Just
I represent Whole Foods in Nigeria, and we have millions of dollars for you. And
please give us your information. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's one of those, to your point about the wrapper having your drink. It's like, that's one of those things that you can't predict, that kind of magic. Like, that's luck, to be quite honest.
Yeah. I mean, we had done all the right things to get in. But we were just in the shop, we were just in the mix. Who knows when the next time they were going to go through and look for new products. And the buyer found us, and we reached out immediately and tried to move as quickly as possible. And then at that time, we were just signing on with a local distributor for Virginia and DC, and they had a really good relationship with Whole Foods. And so things just clicked. Like, all of a sudden, a Friday night turned into things moving really fast. Mm-hmm. And in the next couple of weeks, we had it ready to go. So.
Yeah.
Wow. Now I want to go back to like how COVID, because you touched on the very beginning. So what stage were you again when COVID hit?
We were ready to go into production.
You're ready to go into production.
We had our production date scheduled for, I believe it was like March 25th. We were supposed to start, and we had already delayed because going back to all of the compliance for the federal government, our labels were stuck in review longer than we thought they would be. So we were supposed to produce in February, and we had already delayed. And then COVID hit, and I mean, California, which is where we produce all of our cocktails, was in lockdown.
Yeah, they shut down the state.
So we didn't even know, are we going to even be able to do this? But manufacturing for agriculture and all of that kept running. Thankfully, the wine producer was still running. And so there were some delays, and we got pushed about a week or so out, and it took much longer because they had to do all the physical distancing. And so it took like 3 days to produce one flavor versus just one day. But I think that the biggest challenge honestly came down to supply chain,
Yeah.
and everything was disrupted. And I mean, we had, one ingredient sitting at the manufacturer and just kept not getting picked up, not getting picked up. Like, and we were literally making phone calls of like, well, this thing needs to go. We were mixing our beverage literally tomorrow. And it got picked up, which was great. And then it got shipped to Fresno, like not even where it needed to go. And
completely the opposite direction.
Completely the opposite direction. We're not in California. We're picking up the phone and calling every like relationship that we had made as new business owners, and managed to get one of our transporters to pick it up and drive it all the way north to Sonoma. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that was just like, who knew that was going to happen? That was
luck and pluck. I mean, it was just trying to call everybody you could. And we got lucky. We called our wine trucker and they were like, oh, that's only quarter mile down the road from our depot. We'll send somebody over to grab it and we'll have it up there tomorrow morning. So you just keep going.
Yeah. So in the beverage industry, or you're working with these distributors, how does it work? Like, do you have to do a minimum quantity first run? Is that like is it a lot?
For production? Yes. It's probably more than we were comfortable with, I think, but we didn't have a choice. So we just said we had to do it. We weren't going to delay. We even had the conversation because of COVID. They gave us the opportunity to delay. And we said, you know what, if we don't do it now, who knows where we're going to be in a year from now, or 6 months from now, and what the situation will be, and if we can do it. So we just go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is. I mean, you do have some that specialize in craft because, otherwise you go with the big ones and the numbers are just up. There's no way that you can do it. So you do have to find somebody who is willing to work with small brands.
I had one co-packer tell me they wouldn't touch us for under 1 million cans per flavor. So
1 million.
Yeah. So we weren't there yet.
I just don't understand why more people don't understand that everybody has to start somewhere. It's it's crazy to me.
I do understand from their perspective. They've got a huge production facility with a big line, and it takes them so much time. It's not cost effective to stop and run our little thing and then start back up with, running whatever Coca-Cola products they're going to push through. But
I do have to say this, that you talk about mistakes, right? This, I think, was the best part. All of our stuff has been produced and we're trying to arrange shipping to get it all to Virginia, right? And we're licensed to have the product here in our house so that we can self-distribute. And we finally get like the dimensions of the pallets and we're like, oh no.
And the weight.
This isn't going to fit in in the room that we're licensed to put this in our house. Like, what are we going to do? And so then it's a mad scramble to find a warehouse and do all of that split shipments. So we have some here, some there, but that was another like Friday where we're like sitting there going, how did we not think about that?
That's hilarious. Now, do you guys still have your full-time jobs or are you full-time with your...
I do.
You still have and you're full on.
I'm all in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So I have to ask you, I have just a few more questions. My next one is, you have the Whole Foods and then you have the direct to consumer. Which one do you have the most confidence in? Like, which one do you think has been better for you? Which one do you have more faith it's going to grow?
We were just having this conversation this morning. Honestly, because, and like getting back to even the distribution piece, I mean, it's so fickle and it's like, it is ripe for just disruption, honestly.
Yep.
I mean, I think the opportunity is truly for greater reach, especially in a earlier stage, is direct to consumer, because like we can reach so many more people versus trying to knock on the doors of distributors and say, hey, will you please sign us on?
Yep.
So I believe that, that's the great opportunity, especially with just generally speaking brands nowadays, food, packaged goods, like that's where people feel almost like a comfort level too. And I think with the pandemic, people got very used to just shipping things to their homes and not going out and buying anything. So,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
That's a benefit.
I think that's a benefit. I do think that there are some new opportunities there are some distribution mechanisms that are disrupting the typical business model that I think we can potentially focus on as soon as things start to really open up more. And I think that it's always going to be crucial for us to be on shelves. I don't think that you necessarily hit everybody that you could possibly hit through just digital and, ship it to my house. And yeah, that picture looks good. No, you got to pick it up. It's tactile. You look at the packaging, you see somebody else grab one and put it in their cart. There are lots of different, things that contribute to your sales. And then also, hopefully when things open up, I look forward to doing tastings and events with people in store and having those experiences where we can connect with people directly. And that's just me. That's how I like to do things. I do think that doing those events will help spread the word of our brand. And I think that potentially this summer we can do that.
Yeah, that's been one thing that we had totally planned on and that we were not able to do at all is tastings. Because it is, and we always get so much excellent feedback. Like we're uber confident in our products, right? Like we know that people love the taste. And so now the only way to get the word out is, sending it out and having people review it on social channels and all of that, which, works, but at the same time, it's not as easy as when you can make the transaction right there, at a retailer.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that brings me to the branding you were talking about, Phillip. How did tell us about that? Like, how did you guys come up with the name, the design, the packaging? Like, it's very beautiful. It's very, very, I really, really like it. It reminds me, like your website reminds me of, so in Nashville, me and my wife have our favorite place to get really well-crafted cocktails. And it's called the Patterson House. And it's like this rustic library. And it's awesome. We love it there. And your website, it takes me back there, reminds me of that. And so I'm just curious, did you guys do the design? Did you have a designer do it? Like, what did that look like? And where did the name come from?
She's more the creator.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is marketing and branding. So,
okay.
So yeah,
for cars.
Exactly. So, it really came starting, with the name. What we were really drawn to is, even in our travels, like the idea of like people coming together. We went to Rome and, just sitting and eating al fresco and having people sit at the table next to you. And then all of a sudden you're starting a conversation and eventually you're like this little community of people who don't even know each other very well, but you're making these really wonderful connections over food and beverage. And, when we started to think of that, bringing people together, like an artist colony, right? Or like bee colonies. And so like,
nudist
colonies, whatever your flavor.
Yeah.
But people who come together over a shared experience.
Yep.
And so that's really, where what the name came from. And then from a branding perspective, it's truly who we are. That was easy in terms of briefing. I don't do the actual design work, but briefing our design partners. And I didn't start with like packaging examples. I was sending them pictures of like interiors, to your point of having a feeling of, because I think that everything should be an experience. We are not a product driven brand. We are an experience driven brand, which is why we have all of the different stories that we have on our beverages, on the packaging, because we feel like we stand for something bigger than just, having a great drink. And we hope people can share that experience. So, that's really how everything came together.
Really, we wanted it to exude that exact experience that you're talking about at Patterson House. Mm-hmm. We wanted that whole thing to be in the packaging and on the can and on the website and in everything else that we do.
Because honestly, when you look at the shelves, there's not really much to jump out at you, right? So we needed to be different.
I like that. Yeah. It's just like in wine, I mean, I don't buy it. It's not my favorite, but there's one that always stands out when I go to the store. It's the one, it's like, I think it's called 13 Crimes or something.
Mhm.
It's like convicts on each
Yeah.
bottle. And I'm like, oh, it's different, right? It's
But it
very,
draws you in.
it
Yeah.
does. It's just like you see some old convict on the bottle. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll just drink this serial killer tonight. It's
Yeah.
definitely. So I want to finish up by asking you guys a question that I think will help a lot of the people listening today, because you guys you're a perfect example of someone, your life is in one direction, but you don't want to settle. You have big dreams, big goals. You have the spirit inside of you. You actually took the chance, made the leap, and now you're starting to maneuver yourself to the other side of it, which I have no doubt in the next 2, 3, 4 years, it's going to be everywhere. I mean, like everything that I love marketing, and everything that I've seen that you guys have done has just been done very well. And then there's the backstory and, just all of that. But to all of the listeners that are listening right now, and they are where you were in 2016, and they want to start a successful business of their own. They have yet to make the leap. What would you say to them? And I don't want you to sugarcoat it. I want you to tell them how it is. Like, what advice would you give them? You're speaking on stage to 1,000 of those people, and they're ready to make that leap. What do you say?
I would personally say, honestly, make sure that whatever it is that you're moving forward with, you do have a true passion for, because it's going to be rough, and
Yep.
you have to really love and believe in what you're doing to keep you going and waking up every morning when you have that weight of anxiety on your chest. And I think it's really about remaining resilient and honestly super flexible. I mean, as we look at the way our business was when we started to then 6 months later to 6 months later, it's been a completely different business as it's evolved. And
Right.
so you have to make sure that you have the ability to pivot and just change the way you originally thought of things and continue to evolve the way you think of things, and don't get so stuck on like the idea as you originally had it, because I think that's where people do get stuck and maybe where businesses fail versus being able to adapt, along the way. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say that prepare to hear the word no a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
And don't let that discourage you. Make that embolden you.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that everybody has moments of doubt. And if you need to write yourself a mantra or something that inspires you to get back on the horse and keep going, then that's something that you should do at the outset. But make sure to tell yourself that it can be done.
Yeah. And truthfully, I think we tend to craft narratives in our minds. We create stories of why this person isn't calling me back, or why this person doesn't want to take us on. And honestly, none of it ends up being really true. So what you have to do is just be very clear. And once those stories or that voice creeps in, you just have to like squash it, because it's not going to help move you forward.
Such great advice, like especially what you said, Jessica, on following your passion. Because I think a lot of people today, and this is something I just want to reiterate, because a lot of people today, they're just chasing the money. They see somebody made $1 million in cryptocurrency or something else, and they're literally moving away from what they have a passion for, and they're just following the grass is greener mentality. And I know that's a recipe for long-term failure. And then another thing that you guys said that was really powerful, especially Philip being from bartending. I had a mentor tell me that a long time ago. Give me an example. He's like, don't ever take no personally, because it's like, if you're a waiter and you offer someone coffee and they say no, they're not rejecting you. They're just rejecting your offer. And it doesn't devalue who you are as a person or anything like that. It's just you don't have to take it personal. So it's just very, very good advice. So my very final question is, man, where can people get your beverage? I ordered it. I know where. I'm going to put it in the show notes, but how can people follow your journey, follow your content? How can people order? What is the best place to not only follow your journey, but to order your product as well?
I mean, if you want to order today, which you absolutely should, you can go straight to shop.colonycocktails.com. We have our full site experience just at colonycocktails.com. And, we're on Instagram at Colony Cocktails. So, you can continue to follow us along as we grow, hopefully as we introduce new cocktails to the lineup. But if you want it now, go on.
Yeah, absolutely. And ladies, guys, everybody listening, 10.5% alcohol. You guys know Truly's and Mike's Hard Limit. It's like 5%. You have to drink double that you would have to drink with Colony to get a buzz and to start feeling good. So make sure you go, you order right away. Guys, I appreciate you being on today. This was a great conversation. I learned a lot about beverages, but more importantly, I just think this is a great story that people need right now coming out of the pandemic, of people that against all odds in a difficult industry with kids, you're not 19 years old in college with no responsibilities. You went out and you still chased a dream and you're making it happen. And I love that. I really love that. So I just want to thank you guys so much for being on the show today. And I can't wait for everybody to listen to this episode. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, John, for having us.
Don't forget me when you're doing 200 million a year. We'll have you back on for like an after success, like after.
I would love that.
Look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely.